Hello, everyone, and welcome to our closing stream for this year's Greenlight Jam. We are really excited about all of the games that came out of this year's Jam. For the past 5 weeks, teams have been working on these games, and they've created some really amazing stuff, and we are excited to share that with you all here today. For over the next hour, we have a few different things we're going to share with you, including videos of the games that were created, some insights from our experts and our partners, and a message from last year's winners. And then we will be announcing at the end of the stream, we will be announcing this year's winners. So thank you for tuning in and joining us, and we hope you enjoy what you see here today.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
My musings about the stars, my observations and prayers. This chair has witnessed them all, in spite of the scratches Pangarban has left on it. Oh, isn't he the cutest? I should check up on him. I'll leave the quill here for now. Oh, that's where I left my quill. Pangarban brought a dead bird to the chapel once, and its feathers were strong enough to hold ink. The bishop did not like it one bit. He held onto his rosary tightly that day. Pangarban and I at work. Adepts, equals, cat and clerk. His whole instinct is to hunt, mine to free the meaning pent. More than loud acclaim, I love. Books, silence, thought, my alcove. Happy for me, Pangarban. Child plays round some mouse's den. So it goes, to each his own. No vying, no vexation. Taking pleasure, taking pains. Kindred spirits, veterans, day and night. Soft purr, soft pat. Pangarban has learned his trade. Day and night, my own hard work solves the cruxes, makes a mark. Truth to tell, just being here. Housed alone, housed together, adds up to its own reward. Concentration, stealthy art. Next thing, an unwary mouse bears his flank. Pangar pounces. Next thing, lines that held and held, meaning back, begin to yield.
Hi, I'm Rodrigo. I'm the president of EGADS, and on behalf of EGADS, I'd love to thank the Greenlight Jam organizers for letting us assist in the execution of the jam, for the jam server setup, moderation, and team formation. If you don't know what EGADS is, we're an interdisciplinary student organization at the University of Texas at Austin. We're focused on growing the game development community at our school, and we have a range of events, including industry speakers, workshops, and socials, as well as major events such as our Texas Game Jam in the fall, our Mega Micro Jam in the winter, and our Game Developers Conference in the spring. We're open to all, not just UT students. So if you're interested in any of our events, please join our Discord by scanning the QR code on the screen for announcements and information about all our events. We at EGADS would also like to give you guys some quick tips about how to host your own virtual game jams through Discords, because we'd love to see more game jams out there. The general structure of our jam server is to have a roles channel for easy identification within the server of experience and if a person's looking for a team. We usually use the Jira bot for this. We also like to have a dedicated category for asking for help. This includes engine issues, programming issues, source control issues, and more. Finally, we like to ensure that all participating teams have a location on the server to communicate with each other. Although teams could create their own servers, we feel that reducing the friction to communicate brings out more teams and allow people that have never met before to get together easier. We do this through a team formation channel, which is moderated by a set of individuals who handle requests manually. And then we give each team a text channel, an audio channel, and permissions to add more channels under their team category. The rest of the work of our jams happens on Itch, which handles signups, submissions, and deadlines. These are just the basics of holding a virtual game jam through Discord, but we hope that this general structure makes the task of hosting a game jam less daunting and more approachable. Again, it has been a pleasure helping host this jam, and I can't wait to see what you all make.
Greenlight Jam is proud to partner with IndieCade, the International Festival of Indie Games. We've been members of the IndieCade community since 2010 and support their initiatives such as Horizons, Climate Jam, Hidden Heroes Jam, and of course, the festival and awards. If you'd like to find out more, check out indiecade.com or their Discord, which can be found on the website. As part of their partnership, the winners of Greenlight Jam will receive membership to IndieCade and the opportunity to submit to next year's festival and awards.
aka the Immune CK, and I'm the creator of Hope for the Homeland, a short roguelike where every defeated boss gets you one step closer to the truth. My plan for this jam was to create a vertical slice so I could see what this game would look like. You play as Kibble, a child from the village who goes into the wilderness to get resources to rebuild the village, and while he's out there, he tries to figure out the truth. I wanted to make a roguelike with bosses from African mythology because I didn't know a whole lot about African mythology. I figured this would be a great opportunity to learn some things. I used a mix of handcrafted rooms put together by procedurally generated maps to create the world that Kibble lives in. I was heavily inspired by 2D top-down pixel art games like Hyperlight Drifter, Blazing Beaks, Axolotl, and Moonlighters. I hope you enjoy playing my demo, and I look forward to expanding my game. Thanks so much.
Hello, Greenlight Jammers and assorted others. My name is Blarg, and I'm going to elevator pitch you my game, Shadow Chaser. This will be short because I'd rather you try it out yourself instead of watch my 4,000th playthrough. Shadow Chaser is a pure platformer, where the path you take to success is the obstacle of the next level. Watch here. Once I go through the door, go to level 2, and the shadow will walk the same path I took on level 1. Be careful, the shadow won't respect your pauses, and it erases them from its own path. Runt, the little gray guy, is the hero of the game. He can run, jump, double jump, and perform quick dashes left and right to stall out in mid-air. Play with the keyboard or with any kind of controller. I'd recommend a controller heavily. There are 24 total levels across 10 different stages, and I would say try and beat them all, but the extra stages are very hard, and I'd really only recommend it if you're okay with dying several hundred times. Good luck, have fun jumping, and thanks y'all.
Hey folks, Team Redundancy Team here. We had a lot of fun participating in the Greenlight 2023 Jam, and we hope you enjoy playing our humble 2D platformer. Neither of us have ever participated in a jam, so it's great to have a few different phases. We both had low expectations. We were even glad to have a working wall slide. But once we submitted our prototype, we started to think there may be a chance we could actually enter a decent submission. We had to reduce our scope quite a bit, but learned a lot about creating games along the way. We especially had a great experience learning the Godot version 4 engine. It worked great for developing on different platforms. We want to give a special shout out to everyone who tested and reviewed our submissions along the way. And thanks to the community for being so friendly.
Hey, this is Grant. I'm here to show off my game Trapped in the Shell. It's a card-based fighting game with some semi-turn-based elements. It makes sense when you kind of see how it plays. So first things first, we see an arrow to the right. That means the enemies are spawning on that side. We have our cards down below. We have our moves cards here. We have our fight and moves over here with these two buttons. We have reset, which just shuffles things and reduces some heat. We have our flipping. That way we don't get stuck in one direction. Now as you can see, heat goes up every time we use a card. We do not want it to get to the max because that is when we take damage. And since there's no healing in this game, you're kind of stuck with whatever health you got. Early game, I typically like to keep my health at max. Try to keep heat down below. It seems obvious, but they can really sneak up on you more than you think. And zap. And he was gunning for me, but I don't think he really had a chance. Now, as rounds go on, enemies start getting replaced by harder enemies. Basically, the way it works is we get one basic enemy, then two basic enemies, and then they get upgraded. And then they get upgraded to more and more and more, until eventually you just, no hard cap, but I think typically once you get to around, ooh, that was rough. Yeah, do not like acrobats at all. Those are the green guys. I call them acrobats because they can, well, they're kind of speedy. That's basically it. The main gist of things is, oof, I spend all that time talking about managing heat and I'm not even doing it. Yeah, I need to get away from this guy. Oh, well, that's my game. Hope you enjoyed watching me play terribly.
Hey everyone, I want to introduce to you one of our experts, Chris DeLeon. Chris has been part of the IndieCade community, someone I've known for probably about a decade at this point. Chris has been working with IndieCade since 2007. It's been jamming since 2009 or so, was a finalist in IndieCade in 2010, and is now the alumni lead at IndieCade. We've also had many discussions about what it means to game jam and make games, as well as kind of how to start your career from game jamming. So Chris, you want to tell us what you're up to today?
Yeah, sure. So these days I run something called Home Team Game Dev. It's an online worldwide remote practice group where it's a little bit like the energy of a jam or like Greenlight, but on a 2 to 6 month schedule. We release every project on time, and I support members directly. The schedule calls me for help on scheduling, programming, game design questions. We have specialists provide support on level design, art, audio, etc. And we've released our 180 games this way the past 8 years. We got podcasts, YouTube, ebooks, audiobooks, stuff like that attached to it. But I support game developers in that format, who often they maybe only have a few hours here and there throughout a week, but they make games they want to make. It's all freeware stuff, and so this very much speaks to me. And so when Tyler reached out about Greenlight and what's happening over here, I was like, that's my people. This is what I've dedicated so much of my life and career to. Before it was my career, now doing it for Home Team. I ran college clubs at Georgia Tech and Carnegie Mellon of kind of a similar format, like semesterly projects. And so I love this kind of stuff going on. I used to run a home hobby game dev blog for 5 or 6 years. I think we're talking more in a second about just loved making games, and all my life been zigzagging. Whenever I was doing game industry professionally, I was still making games as a hobby on the side. So I just love everything about this and happy to be here.
Which leads me to our kind of first question in our tips and tricks chat here. So for you, why do you still game jam, right? You're well over a decade into this career. Why are you still going back and doing these small jams, prototypes? What's the purpose in doing non-commercial projects if you could do commercial projects?
Yeah, it's that for me, my priority has been there's certain things I want to make, right? If you were a singer, there's songs you want to sing. If you're a dancer, there's dances you want to do, and there's stuff we want to produce in the world that may or may not fit what currently there's a good business case to be had for. Is it a saturated market? Will people pay for that form of monetization or whatever? And it can just be, there's a thing I want to create. And it may not be that it has a strong business case, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't exist, right? I think a lot about like Bob Ross is teaching people to paint because it's worth painting, not to make your living as a painter, not to go out there and how much can you charge for your landscapes. It's like, you should do this because it's enriching and it's lovely and it's fun. It's a part of being human. And so it's very much my attitude towards game development, and why I will continue to always be making games that I just want to make, whether or not it has any overlap, whatever, to what I am making my earning and living doing.
One of my favorite game jams that I participated in about a decade ago now was Mother's Day Jam, where we made games and the only theme was make it for your mom, right? Like the idea that you could make a game for one other person, it's a greeting card in video game form.
I propose a little iPad game. Like, it's a very normal part of life, and I've got friends who do Valentine's Day card games, and it's a great thing.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, meeting Chris, I think one of the most fantastic things was the idea, the sort of light bulb moment that hobby game dev could exist, that not all games had to be commercially built. And I think just having that as a mentality, knowing that that's a possibility, and there's no shame in it, right? It's not that you failed to make a commercial product, it's you chose not to make a commercial product. I think that's really important to keep in mind. Not all games need to be okay, how do we make money on it now, right? When you finish a game jam game, I think it's important to then assess, is this a game that we're just happy with it where it was? If we do want to take it further, the kind of next question for Chris and I to go through is, well, what do you do next? If you have decided, yes, we want to do more, what's next for us, Chris?
Yeah, so for me, it's often a case of any sort of external validation. This is part of where IndieCade was so helpful early in my career, of a curated show that had a bunch of submissions, picked it out and said, this is an interesting thing worth talking about. Or I do these little experimental prototypes for 7 months. I made an experimental gameplay project every single night on the internet. But I went back and looked at which ones did people actually play. And it doesn't mean it was like a huge spike, but compared to the others, some had 5x, 10x the attention. I went back and doubled down on those. And it's any kind of justification for, let's say you're a band with some friends just doing garage songs. How do you decide which ones to try to like really push hard? Well, you play it for people and you figure out, what do people keep asking for? They want us to come back. They talk about. You need some validation outside yourself in whatever form that might take, of press coverage, views on a YouTube video trailer about it, people talking about it, sharing on Twitter. There's no one single right answer to that. It could also be, there's cases I've done a project where there was one trusted advisor, industry mentor, expert, somebody who I trusted the lens of, they said, there's something here. That was all it took for me. That was the validation I needed. Double down on that one.
Yep. Yeah, I have continued jams for very similar reasons, where it's one thing to win a game jam or to, receive an award. That's great. That's a great sign that compared to the other games in that jam, that there's something there. But I think the first step of taking it outside of the jam, get some friends and family to play it, get local game club to play it, bring it to an IGDA or some sort of local meeting. If you can get a couple people to be like, okay, yeah, I see it, I like it, I want more of it. I always say, like, find that person who you normally has very harsh opinions as well, because they're the one that's going to feed it to you straight, right? And then the other part of it that I think we should definitely go over is the importance of, you need agreements, right? One of the first things you have to do when you decide you're going to make money on a game is you have to start a business, right? You have to have some legal agreements. So my tips I'm just going to kind of throw out there is, you should have an agreement with everyone on the team. You do not need a lawyer from the start. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving this advice as a lawyer, and I'm not trying to dismiss the value of a lawyer, but just to start, just to say, hey, we want to keep working on this game. Hey, we want to put it on Steam, right? We want to put it on Android and iOS. Just get an email chain going, something where you've discussed it, a Google Doc or something that you print, and you all just put a signature on it just to say, we agree to start. Eventually, the game releases, you make money, you go back and you create an official founders agreement, you get it in more official wording, but you can start with something real simple of just saying, this is how we're going to split revenue. If someone wants to leave the project, this is what it looks like. Like, start discussing those things sooner rather than later.
Yeah, in Home Team, everybody in our group is through a membership agreement, which is some plain language for, like, this is for freeware, this is the way it's being used in our group. So you maintain, you keep your own rights. If you want to sell your own music outside, you want to use your own models, use your own code, you keep your own stuff. But people are on the same page, and that's where I think sometimes people forget. When they think about contracts, they picture this legalese. They start trying to write like a ancient Renaissance heretofore thereunto, and like they're worried about, is the word shall enforceable in the state of Washington? Like, you're asking the wrong questions, right? At the end of the day, where those things are super important. If you're dealing with a much bigger party who can just destroy you out of existence, well, it's something that is very important, because they could. When it's small parties, we're like, gosh, neither of you has the time, the money, whatever, to fight this out. You want to get on the same page. You want to make sure you're on the same common understanding. If you both looked at the same words and said, like, yeah, that's consistent with my expectations going into this, and it keeps you out of trouble down the line about, heck, we can't launch a project because one person said, I no longer like you people. We can't use their art because now they've done so much other art that they feel like ashamed of the art they put in there. Just coming to this common terms and plain language about how those things are going to work, how they're going to look. But like you say, and it's tricky because obviously we're not lawyers. I'm not a lawyer either. This is not legal advice. Don't hold us liable. But a note of certainly there's a whole lot of projects in the world that should exist, are worth doing, involve teams, involve other people. But if your step one was, well, we got to pay a $300 an hour lawyer to draft custom contracts around each of our circumstances, now you're running a business, and that's back to where we're talking about this other thing about, okay, well, how are you going to see ROI on that? How are you going to recoup those costs?
Yeah.
And you've got a different calculation at play.
Yep. So the TLDR is, get something in writing now, get it in legalese.
It could be an email, something electronically recorded. There's a date stamp on it. You can have evidence they replied. You're on the same page.
Yeah. I would highly recommend looking up the term sheets, because ultimately what it comes down to is you're coming up with the basics of the term sheet. So let's move on to the next important question is, one of the other big things that comes from, okay, we've made a prototype, we've made a game jam, is like, we want to continue it. How long, right? Is this going to be a decade project? Are you going to spend another month on it? How long you continue to make one particular project, I think, is something that everyone should consider within the team. How long do you want to be attached to any individual project? What is potentially your career going to look like? Are some of you looking for jobs? Will someone maybe land a job where an NDA suddenly comes in and non-compete? So kind of, Chris, from your perspective, with a lot of the folks you've worked with, what's your advice in that space?
Yeah, so our tendency is we try to not set, but basically our window is usually about within 6 months is where we're trying to be about as crystal clear as we can about, like, that's the reality. Because you start talking about 3 years from now, 5 years from now, I don't want to say you're making it up, but people don't even know themselves well enough to know what their life circumstances about. Like you say, someone gets a job, now they can't. Someone has a life change in the situation. Someone starts school, leaves school. priorities shift. They have a kid, etc. And you can also keep making games as a parent too, but temporarily there's a time commitment there that I have seen shift people's priorities, and no judgment there at all. But it is to say, okay, well, how long are we looking at this for? Because I start zooming out, and there are games that people will spend 5 or 10 years on. I like to work on lots of different things, like touch different genres and have different collaborators and make different stuff. That's part of my need as a game developer. Even if it's a good commercial case for like, well, I'm going to babysit this project and work on sequels and ports and oversee its distribution and merch. And there's nothing wrong about that. But one thing I find helpful to think about is zooming out in your life. How many games do you want to make? Right. And if you're dedicating 10 years to a project, how many of those are fitting in before your, retirement age plus or minus?
Yeah.
And again, thinking about this, your team stuff, part of why we also would tend to, in home team, cap it about 6 months for our window is what are the obligations to these teammates are you expecting all of them to be on this bus for 5 or 10 years? Because I've had projects people thought they were on there for the long term. They're gone 18 months later. And like, again, not a problem, but is that consistent with the agreement you all had about, well, someone kept doing this for 6 years. Yeah. Somebody popped out and hasn't seen it since. And is there stuff still being used? Is it being credited? And like you said, it depends on, okay, the real question is, why are you doing this? Like, what's your reason for this? And if the reason is you wanted a portfolio piece, try to get you a job somewhere, it's going to behoove all of you to have it out there, to have it on Steam, to have it released, to have trailers, to have gone through a full cycle to finish the whatever that entails, which is different than I'm really trying to build a launch product for a studio off of this as an arc of this is going to be our whole day jobs for all of us is a different plan and approach than this is a piece of our portfolios. This is a piece of our resumes.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I feel like that also changes a lot of the conversations about the commercial aspects too, right? Portfolio pieces aren't normally something you necessarily charge for. In fact, charging for it then puts an extra barrier on someone who would look at your portfolio. If they have to pay to see it, they're probably not going to. So something to consider when making that decision of not just do we continue, but why are we continuing a project? So that brings me to the next question, which is if you are continuing this project, whether it's for a portfolio, whether it's planned for commercial, when do you show it next to the world, Chris?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different answers for this, and it's tricky because again, it depends on like why are you doing it, but one thing I will say is that if your goal is to reach people with it, right, which you can't count on anymore, and I say anymore because there were eras like I did an early launch iPhone game. People, if you put it on an iPhone, people saw it. Like you did an early Steam game, people saw it. You did an early Android game, people saw it. You did an early VR game, people saw it. That is typically not the case for most of these platforms. Valve isn't going to sell your Steam game. Apple's not going to sell your game on the App Store. Like they don't care. They have so many other things to sell that there's a high ROI on show this ad to somebody. It's just not in their best interest to prioritize that. So instead it becomes you need to figure out how do I reach my audience and build that audience, whether it's a Discord, whether it's an email list, whether it's whatever. And a lot of it becomes how do you find the audience relevant to what you're doing? Well, probably by showing them what you're doing, whether it's GIFs, GIFs, Zites, however you like to say it, whether it's video trailers, whether it's pump up newsletter, however you can find to communicate with and find your people. It's going to help you also iterate and adapt to their feedback and stuff, but you want that sooner rather than later. You don't want to play this game like used to happen in the 80s of people would disappear for 2 years, making an arcade cabinet surface and be like, we hope this isn't a total failure. And it is sometimes. And what a crater it leaves that could have been avoided earlier if they put it out there and be like, you know what, based on the responses we're getting, the energy level, maybe we should be rethinking what we're doing the next couple of years. Is a better conversation to have in 3 months than in like year and a half.
And I think for everyone here, especially, if you participated in Greenlight Jam, you have the start of a community here, right? You all can ask each other, hey, will you join our private Discord server? And we're going to have a role for playtesters. And we're going to ping you in a couple of months and ask you to try a latest build. This is a great co-dev opportunity, right? Like this is, we QA for you, you QA for us, we give feedback, we kind of create opportunities for each other in a way that you start that community here. However, there's a big caveat to that. Chris, what's the caveat?
Sure. So the caveat is that developers, as a part of the population, cannot be your core audience, and to not lose sight of that fact. And like one of my favorite things about making games start my life has been meeting people like Tyler and everyone else I've met through Indicate over the years, and I organized speakers through Indicate for years, and I met so many great people doing it. Go to GDC, meet people, love all this stuff. But as a percentage of the population, the people who are coming in from the lens of fellow game programmers who look at something and be like, oh, I bet that was really hard to do. Just not a critical mass you can sell something to. So you need to make sure you're also looking for, reaching, prospecting, building upon people who aren't just sharing your interest as a game development person. Again, it's important to have those kind of communities, people who support each other. And as I think about this, right, at an indie scale, you're often not competing directly with each other. It's not like people are going to buy your game or theirs. Oh, you got to raise all your boats. You got to look out for each other, give each other feedback. And we see, I mean, part of the Boston indie scene now had the same thing out in LA. Wherever you're at, and it could be online scenes and home team is part of what people do with each other. Supporting each other is important, but to not confuse that that's a foundation to build on. It's a stepping stone towards we got to also reach more players, or the numbers just aren't going to be there for sales, for reach, for plays, that kind of stuff.
And sort of last follow-up on that, I think it's also important to remember that as a game dev, when you're giving feedback to another game dev about their game, there's you as a player and you as a dev, and they want the feedback from you as a player more. Like, it's hard to accept that. You want to give them tips on how to fix something in Unity. Oh, I see a bug, and maybe I can. They want to know your play experience, right? Now, if you're offering to help to QA, if you're offering to really dive in and help with that, that's a separate conversation. And certainly, I think it's worth having. But ultimately, you have to try to separate that when giving feedback as a dev. You have to break that part of your brain off and just be a player for a little bit of time if you want to give really helpful advice or feedback to your play experience. So with that said, we're going to end with kind of a final piece of advice from both of us. So Chris, what is your final tip for folks who've just finished a 5-week game jam?
Yeah, so mine is to first of all, congratulations. Well done. Amazing. Y'all rock. But to not lose sight of when you're navigating these different choices, for me, it's always been, I want to make games for my lifetime. And a lot of people have helped and supported and trained and taught up. It's been, we're thinking the long arc. It's never just one project. It's how does this fit into I'm going to keep making games and make 5 more games out of this, 10 more games. I'm going to keep making games. And that becomes for me a really helpful guiding post, and not just making games, making the kind of games we want to make. And that's part of why, again, I think jams, freeware, non-commercial can still be useful, even if you do wind up, let's say you take this 5-week game, it goes onto Steam, it blows up, becomes like a main thing you're doing, to not then miss out on, show up at some game jams, keep making some freeware stuff, keep experimenting and learning. And those are great places to still test new skills, meet new people, try other stuff, just kind of get some of the joy you got from the rapid learning phase, which is different from you're kind of babysitting it for years, overseeing reviews, feedback, community management, all valid things, all important part of the work. But you don't want to lose sight of, what you like doing about it, and making sure you're doing some of that too. You're fitting that into your life alongside however it starts to intersect your business future.
Great. Thanks for that, Chris. And so my last piece of advice is same as Chris, is if you're here and you did Greenlight Jam, like, well done, right? The drop-off rate on a jam like Greenlight is far more than a standard game jam. And even those have a pretty high drop-off rate, right? We see generally about 50% of people actually make it through the end of the jam. So well done, congrats. However, making a game is not it. It's not it. You're not done, right? A lot of the advice we just gave is more about the people side of things, right? Building networks, understanding kind of who's who. Sometimes the game you make from a jam doesn't matter, but the people you jammed with are the ones that you then make another game with and kind of carry on. So for me, I think one of the most important things to consider is you could be the best programmer, you could be the best artist, you could be the best at whatever your technical skills are, whatever your design skills are, whatever they may be. But having those kind of personable skills, being someone other people want to work with or get to know or kind of see at the next game jam is critical. Making those lasting connections and having that network that you grow over your years is critical to making a sustainable career in games. So, maybe this jam game, you're done with it after Greenlight. That doesn't mean you can't connect with other jammers, whether they were on your team or not, kind of follow up with people later, find out if someone's going to a game conference or, going to PAX or something near you and meeting up with them. Like, keep building those networks, because that can be just as important as the games you make and the skills you have.
And actually, if I can even throw one thing on top of it, and especially because, and this is fully remote, right? These people are everywhere. So, right, because there are still other opportunities happening where it may not be an in-person conference, you may not have the vacation days, you may not have the travel funds, whatever. But if it's an online thing happening, that means anybody else you jammed with, you met through this, you can let them know about it and attend together. And that's so much more fun to have someone else to talk about it with, to discuss after, to be in the Twitch chat with together, whatever, than if you just show up on your lonesome. And even that's a valuable part of not just, okay, this was a great jam, you walk away like summer camp and never see these people again, but maintaining, are there some connections from that I can keep building on, stay in touch with, and you've got in common, you like game industry stuff, you like game development stuff, use that, find opportunities for each other, connect each other, keep doing stuff together.
I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity and say, if you're watching on Twitch, you're watching on Discord, post your Twitter, post your LinkedIn, post some connections, find ways to keep in touch outside of the jam if you haven't already. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and wrap. So thanks y'all for listening, and good luck to all of the folks who jammed.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Score 0-1. Ready, fight! Score 0. Game set. You win. Ready, fight! Score 0-1. Game set. Game, set. You win. Ready, fight. Score 2-0. Score 2-1 on the line. Game, set.
All right, everyone. I'm here with Joseph and Sean of the Team Marmalades. This was last year, 2022's Greenlight winners with the game Pescavarian. The team had over 10 members, but unfortunately they couldn't make it today. So we're going to chat with Joseph and Sean from the team on what they've been up to since last year's Greenlight Jam. So, y'all, what have you been up to?
Well, we've all been, we've been working on the project on and off, trying to like tinker around with it more and get it expand on what we were able to do during the jam. And as for like the individual team members, pretty much everyone is still we still have a few of us that are students, and then a lot of us have now gone into the industry and are like working full time in the industry, which is really cool.
From what I understand, you also met at GDC.
Yeah, not all of our team members were like in the same state. So we all met for the first time like at GDC, like collectively, all except one member who wasn't able to go. And that was like a really exciting experience for me personally.
What was it like
I know.
meeting folks that you had already worked with before?
Yeah, no, that part was definitely like very interesting because I ended up meeting everyone about like the day before at a Game Jolt like carnival before the Wednesday of GDC. And that was also like really calming for me too because it's like nervous meeting people for the first time, but like meeting them in more a very casual environment, like kind of calmed my nerves a lot, and it made like uh talking and to these people that I worked with a lot more enjoyable.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I met the guy who did like audio stuff for us, Nando. I remember I just met him like totally randomly on the first day of GDC when me and one of my friends were like standing looking at a map of the convention to try and get like a sense of where everything was, and I'd like noticed this guy like kind of hanging around and like looking over at us, and I was like, "What is this guy doing?" And then I looked and I noticed on his badge it said like Nando DePaul University, and I was like, "Oh my God, what's up?" And that was super cool. And then having everyone come and see our booth because some of us from the Marmalades team also were working on another game called Refresh that we had a booth and we were showing it at GDC. And so like having all the people that we worked with on Pescaberry and coming and seeing like this other thing was really cool.
That's awesome. So I'm sure a lot of folks are going to want to know, what did you do like right after Greenlight was done? So Jam ended. Congratulations, you won. Did you all like? Did you have conversations about what to do next? Did you just sort of assume you were going to keep working on it? What was it like that kind of immediate after the awards?
Yeah, so pretty immediately after the jam, we did get together and we talked about like some of the big changes that we wanted to like continue to work on because a lot of the stuff that we did during the jam was pretty quick and dirty. So we actually focused on kind of uh, overhauling a good couple of the systems to make it more clean. Like I was specifically working like with the enemy code, so I changed that from just kind of normal nav mesh mapping to, be a little bit more intelligent with like how it was actually approaching and attacking the player. We made like one enemy that is like a school of fish that shoots out little fish like a machine gun. And Connor, who did a lot of the player code and the player attack code, he focused on changing the way that the West weapon system was working like immediately after the jam. So we talked a lot about those changes.
And how about after? So a couple months, 6 months after reaching near the end of the year, where were you all then at that point? Were you still working on it? Did you have like schedules and plans, or was it just kind of when available?
Yeah, so originally we were talking about like kind of having it fully polished up and finished by like, we're like, oh, end of summer, and then it was end of the calendar year. And then as we realized that like we were all kind of busy with other things, 6 months after the jam, we were meeting like semi regularly, where we would just kind of talk about like I feel like we lost a lot of the constraints that we had put on ourselves, where we weren't as worried anymore about like a release window, and we were just talking about like things that we thought would be cool to like try and add or polish up in the game. Um, so as time went on, we definitely like lost some of the structure, but I think a big thing that I learned from that is that like release isn't everything, and that like a hobby project can just be like a hobby project, and it doesn't have to be like the next big thing that you release, and it doesn't have to like be a successful product, because just from like the coming back to Pescabarian and like trying things and learning things, like I was able to take a ton of that and apply it to like other projects that I was working on in a more professional way. And I feel like it was like a good like hobby thing to come back to.
Yeah, I agree entirely with that too. Like a lot of the stuff that I worked on with Pescavarian like exposed me to topics that I'm now like using more in depth, like in my other like projects and just life. So like that's a really big takeaway from that.
Fantastic. And of course, the last question here is the where are you now? So, a year later, a year and actually, what, 2 months? Where are you now as a team?
But we all still talk like quite a bit. We did a lot, or quite a few of us who did Pescavarian did GMTK a couple weeks ago. Earlier in the year, uh, all of us Pescavarian team members across like 2 or 3 teams, I think we're working on um, global game jam projects. So the team still is actively working on projects together, usually like game jams if we have time and stuff. So like that's always really fun. Um, and now, like Jojo said earlier, like everyone's kind of spread out working or being students doing the same stuff that we were working on with Pescavarian.
Yeah, it's been like super cool to kind of like expand my circle of people to not just people I've met like at university, but people all around the country. And like even if we're not working on the project as much anymore, just like seeing what everyone else is doing and being like, whoa, this is really cool. And like how Sean was talking about how like he has this really cool project he's working on and like getting Karina to come and help with that. Which I think y'all met through Pescabarian. So just like maintaining those contacts has been really cool.
Fantastic. And as we wrap, I just want to ask one more for you all. What's the number one piece of advice you have for folks just wrapping up Greenlight Jam and figuring out their next steps?
Uh, the number one thing that I would definitely say is like the longer the project is takes as like students as like recent graduates it's that's not going to really help you in the long run. Definitely come up with a timeline immediately after the jam of like what you want to do from improving your Greenlight Jam build to release build, and try and keep it relatively like short. Like, you know, any kind of year plus timeline is probably not gonna stay solid for that whole year. So definitely be smart with how you want to. Maybe 3 months, 4 months is a good time frame. So that's my advice.
Yeah, kind of going along with that, I feel like the biggest difference from doing a green light or doing any jam really and then going into like regular development is that with the sprints and milestones in the green light jam, they're really good at giving you structure, and then going from that to like not having any like management structure. I think it's really important to either like delegate someone from the team or maybe bring someone else onto the team who can handle those more overhead management responsibilities. Because that can be like invaluable in just like making sure everyone knows like what they're supposed to be doing or like what needs to happen. And so like your meetings have when you meet with your team, there's like direction, you know, like what needs to be talked about and stuff. So I say that's like the biggest difference that I noticed from jam to development.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for your time, and we hope to check in with you all next year again.
Hey everyone, we hope you enjoyed seeing all the games that came out of Greenlight Jam this year, and now I'm very excited to tell you about this year's winners. All of this year's winners will receive an IndieCade membership. Our first award is for excellent feedback, and this goes to Blargen Smurf, who rated all of the entries. Nice job, Blargen Smurf. Thank you for sharing your feedback with others. Our next award is called We Want More, and this goes to Hope for the Homeland. Nice job, and we hope you'll keep making more. Our next award is Ready for Sale. This is a game that we believe could be for sale right now, and this goes to Pawns Gambit. Congratulations, Team Arkwright. Our next award is Best Audio, and this award goes to King of Ping Pong Megamix. Next up is Best Art, and this award goes to Turtle Tycoon. And Best Gameplay, this award goes to Micro Rogue. For our next recipient, they will also receive a monetary stipend for the game's continued development and a voucher to submit their game to the IndieCade Festival. This is our grand prize award, and if we could get a little drum roll going in the chat, this award goes to Michi's Adventure by Positive People. Congratulations, Positive People, on the grand prize award. Congrats to all of our winners, and thank you everyone for joining us and for your participation in Greenlight Jam. Jammers, we couldn't have done it without you. And for those of you who are watching, who are joining us as viewers, we hope you'll check out all of the games on itch, and we hope you enjoyed what you saw here. We want to encourage you all to stay in touch with each other. Jammers, your teams will stay active, and you can continue to use them on our Greenlight Jam server, and you can continue to talk to other participants of the Greenlight Jam server. We will keep it active throughout the year, and we won't remove any of the existing teams until next year's Jam. So we hope that you will keep in touch with each other, and we'll continue working on your games, and we will see you next year. Thanks, everyone.